Hello, class. Here's your chapter 6 lecture for writing on the web. We're talking about news blogs, websites, social media, etc. Now, of course, the first question we have to address is why write online? We're looking at direct audience interaction. That means analytics, comments. So anytime you hear someone talk about looking for that audience interaction with their posts, they're going to be using something similar to Google Analytics if they aren't using that to see how many times it's shared, what's going on, are people commenting on it, is it are people staying on the site longer than the first 5 seconds they need to read the headlines. You're also looking at a platform where you can offer immediate updates to your audience. So that means if you're in sales, for example, you would be able to post a flash sale right away on social media or on your website. If you are involved with a company that has to issue an emergency press release, you can send those right away. You don't have to wait to do it. You can offer any sort of immediate commentary that needs to be done instead of having to wait for traditional news media like the 5 o'clock news or the next day's paper, anything like that. You have that immediate interaction with everyone, and you can react to your audience's questions as well as offer them updates every minute of the day. Now, when we're talking about audience interaction, the one place where you can definitely get the majority of your interaction is going to be on a self-hosted website or blog. So most companies do create their own websites because they know they can control all of the content on it. They're able to offer this information right away to their audience. They know everyone who is subscribing to their RSS feed, to their emails, they'll receive this information right away. This can also work if you create a blog for what I mean, if you create an app for a website, that works as well. Social media does work too, but the one problem with social media is you are relying on another company's platform. And most of the time, those companies are looking to make their own money and have their own interactions between and act as a middleman between you and these other people in your audience. So the best place to post first is a website or blog, and then afterward you can share it to social media, use your RSS feed, send those mass emails to people to let them know that you have an update available on your website. Now, when you're writing online, it's a little different than with traditional news. Now, traditional news sites do have their own types of websites. So we're talking about TV, newspapers, radio. They all have websites now where they offer additional content. Usually it's either a variation on a story they already published, or sometimes they do actually branch out and offer more information online than they would necessarily on their traditional platform. Online only news websites would be something like HuffPost. They are only online, so they approach their distribution of news a little differently. They're able to send reporters to do different kinds of stories than some traditional news websites, but in general, they're still following a news format. Magazines are something where traditional magazines, hobby magazines, or sports, different topics all have their own websites now. And this is in addition to the plethora of specialized content websites that now exist. That means fashion, apartments, sometimes even space travel, or they'll have they'll have websites that specialize in fiction writing or just a whole host of different ideas, everything under the sun now online. Whenever you're writing, of course, you always want to consider your audience. This is very, very true. Whenever you're writing online, you have an audience looking for quick excerpts of information. They want to, most of the time, they're looking for the immediate answer to whatever their question is. We're also looking at an audience who is probably going to use your information in some way. For example, if they are looking up a recipe for the best Thanksgiving turkey, think about how someone's going to use it. They're going to be looking not just at the directions, but looking at comments to see how many people liked the recipe you posted. Or they're going to be engaging with it in some way where they're possibly, in their kitchen, scrolling through it on their phone, figuring out how to put this together for Thanksgiving dinner. Immediacy. Whenever you post online, you have to make sure you include a dateline. Things online have a tendency to live forever. So even if the topic you're discussing is evergreen or something, in other words, something that will work a decade from now just as well or almost as well as it does today, you still want to include those dates for your audience so they know when this item was published and they can determine whether or not it suits their current circumstances. Whenever you are publishing a story that has immediate updates, if you have a missing persons report and you need to update that they found them, you need to include that information on either the same page or possibly you're going to create a new page. For example, whenever you're doing hurricane recovery, you aren't going to have that on the same page as the hurricane information as it's happening. However, you might link both of those pages together to help your audience understand the big picture of what's happening. You also need to consider your audience's viewing platform whenever you are working on a story. Are they using a phone, a tablet, a computer? Are they going to go through your app and look at something? Are they using someone else's app to view your information? Are you including multiple links where they will need to move between your writing on a traditional browser into Twitter and then back onto another platform? How are you going to keep them engaged in your website or on your app? And also, of course, you want to make everything as easy to read as possible. It's very hard to read something the size of your palm whenever you have 6 or 7 sentence paragraphs all meshed together. And of course, you have additional elements whenever you're writing online. You're able to add slideshows, images with text. You can include videos. You can have audio. People with podcasts tend to do a combination, or you'll see them linked to a YouTube video where you can see the person they're interviewing. Now, let's take a look at a few examples so you can understand a little more about what to look for whenever you are creating your web article. Now, with this first one, this is an article from the traditional radio site NPR. They decided to create this whole subcategory here called Life Kit. And they have, as you can see right here, they have the name of their website or organization at the top. Then they have all of their subheadings here. Now it's under the category Life Kit, and then it says it has the title or the heading of the article. Burnout isn't just exhaustion. Here's how to deal with it. And it has the date it was published and also the authors here. It also has a link to the audio recording. So this is the original format for this information. Then they break down the page by including a picture here. They have the little picture caption explaining who provided this picture for them. And then we move into the introduction. So this is a kind of a brief version of the article. It gives you the meat and potatoes of what's happening. As you can see, they are breaking it down one or two sentences per short paragraph. But altogether, this entire section is essentially the introduction to the rest of the information provided by the article. Now we have a subheading, burnout is more than you think. Under the subheading, it explains burnout. They use their interview with a psychologist to back up their information. So she is the one providing this information, explaining what burnout is. They paraphrase some of the information and then provide direct quotes where necessary. You want to use quotes that will speak to your audience, not ones where someone is repeating a number or any sort of dry statistical information. You want something that's a little easier for your audience to understand and relate to. And then you can see they have additional subheadings, spot the signs of burnout, and then they include an additional interview with another doctor and have more information explain how to spot it. The reason you're using these subheadings is think about how this would look if you were looking on your phone. You're looking at something that is a somewhat long article with a lot of different key points. So your subheadings are highlighting key points in your main topic. So if I read this introduction and I said, well, I know what burnout is, I want to see whether or not I'm suffering from burnout, I can go straight to this second subheading. Or if I want to read a little more about the causes or signs of burnout, I can look at this third subheading here, or ways you can manage it or address it at work with your employer or your employees. They also have that. So this is kind of their call to action. How can you bring this into the workplace? How can you act upon the information that they provided for you? Now, call to actions look a little different depending on how they are written, what type of information you're trying to convey. For example, let me see. For sports, a lot of times you're looking at something where they will give you let's say the next game day, or you're pushing the information forward a little bit. So here we see it's under the ESPN title. So the main company is ESPN. They have their title here. This was broadcast originally on television, and you can see the video right here. They have a bunch of buttons right here to be able to share the article. They have who wrote this information here. So this is your byline again. And they also have the time of publication, since I believe this was published this was published today. So as we look at this, you can see they did offer multiple paragraphs. Their formatting is a little different than the previous one we saw. Now, in this case, what they're doing is they're talking about rookie quarterbacks. So this writer's offering a little information here on different ones. And then their call to action, since they aren't talking about a specific team, they're saying here, look at our additional articles about these different quarterbacks, and you can click on them and see any additional information they have available about those people. Now, there are a couple of other ways articles are written as well. One of them is the explanatory article. So someone is trying to tell you how to do something. Sometimes an article with pictures works better. Sometimes it's better to write a script and have a video. In this case, they went with the article. And since we are primarily a writing class, we're going to look at the article version. Now, you can see they offered the website name, WikiHow. Then we have the subcategories for this article in case we want to learn any more about alternative health or reflexology. And they have the title of the piece, the headline, how to give a reflexology massage, and then the author and the author's information, as well as the date of publication. In this case, it's an article that was updated September 24th. Whenever you're writing your citations, you do not need to put retrieved by whatever for this kind of thing. You're just including this last updated as your date. So their introduction is here, and they provide additional sources using footnotes with links. You can also include links within the article, and both of those are very valid ways to offer that primary source information to your audience. Now, they offer a little browsing area here, so you can see they have it broken down by the methods and expert Q&A, tips and warnings. Now, for theirs, the way they're separating everything is using both subheadings and pictures. They have method 1, hands, and then they break all this information down, going step 1, few sentences, and then additional information in case you want a little more of an explanation, but not part of the primary information you need to understand how to do this. And then again, picture and another subheading. And another paragraph. They have a little footnote. And in their case, they did include a video link because some people do work a little better with videos. Again, when you're doing this, think about how your audience is going to interact with your information. How is it going to work best for them in order to understand what's happening and use the information you provided? Now, this last one, this is from a traditional magazine, Wired magazine. So they have a print copy. They also have their digital version. They tend to pretty much copy the same format from their magazine onto the website. That's fine, but depending on what kind of information you have, remember your audience is mostly people who are looking at something on their phone or a tablet. So you want to break down the information into very short, 2 or 3 sentence paragraphs of information, and then use subheadings to identify the key points in the information you're offering. So here is our byline with the author name, date, all this information up here. We have the website name, Wired, and we also have the title or headline, 13 best fitness trackers, and then an introductory paragraph here. Now, in their case, they did put the updated information here. They updated the date here as well, but they're including here that they used some older pics and or removed some of them and then added more information. So it's an older article that they've updated, and they wanted to let the audience know in case they come back to it from the previous edition that it has a little more information in it. Now they're using a combination again of pictures and subheadings to divide the information. They're using the best all around, Fitbit, charge, whatever. And then they have slightly longer paragraphs. Now, part of why they should have slightly longer paragraphs is they're explaining why the reviewer is explaining personally why they wanted to use this Fitbit, or they liked this particular item a little better, how it compares to the other items in the list or not in the list. So they will offer a little more information than some other places for this. And then they have call to action buttons here. They're trying to get you to buy the item if it's the type of Fitbit you want and the price you want. So this would be a call to action. Again, it isn't necessarily a button, but it's a way for your audience to interact with the information and move it forward. So what would be the next step if they say, I like this information, I agree with you, what is the next step? The next step is I'm going to click on this button and go to the Target website and buy it. Or I'm going to go to watch the upcoming game for UL, or whatever the next step is in the thing. So you're providing additional information so they can interact with what you've given them. And again, picture, subheading, paragraphs, buttons. You get the idea. They're pretty much all more or less in that format. Now, as we saw, they were using small, important bits of information to write their stories. This is more trapezoid and less pyramid style writing. You can break down larger stories into multiple story pages. So you don't have to include everything you think is important about a story on one web page. Even though it's technically possible, think about how many times you've actually scrolled all the way to the bottom of a long web page. You just don't. So find the most important pieces of information. You write a core story, and then you can add links within the story to your other pages, explaining a little more about your topic. You can also break it down, of course, into paragraphs. You want to explain the key points of a story, so make sure you're including headlines and subheadlines. You can use images or video to break it down, bullet lists if your topic warrants a bullet list. Some of them do, some of them don't. It really depends, and it's something you kind of learn as you move on. The most important part is to make sure your formatting matches that it works in a user-friendly way for your audience, and they are able to understand what it is you're trying to say. You can also include slideshows. This can be for different product reviews sometimes. It can also be for a step-by-step process, or if you're explaining medical information, for example, a lot of medical websites use slideshows to show different types of disorders or diseases or things, so their audience is able to understand all of the different parts of the disorder they're describing. Now, updates, of course, are very important. You might have updates where you need to update within the same page. So if you took a previously published page like on wired.com and you needed to update it within the year, so they were saying the top fitness items of 2021, well, partway through the year, they realized they needed to update their list. So they did. They updated it on the same page instead of republishing everything and possibly causing confusion for their audience. Another thing, of course, is including your dates. Include your edit dates, include any additional improvements from sources. If you have a new source of information, a new publication you're including, and this causes your original information to update, you want to explain that to your audience, make sure they understand what's happening. You, of course, want to include links to newer pages, any further explanation or outside sources. Adding links to primary sources is an excellent way to add credibility online. You need to have that primary source information in case your audience decides they don't quite understand the way you put it, or they are a little skeptical about this information. It gives you it gives them additional security, and it makes you seem like a more reliable source when you can point directly to a video or a web page and say, this is my information. If you include a PDF copy of documents you're referencing, that's another example of offering outside sources and allowing your audience to see it for themselves instead of taking your word for it. Now, any sort of blog or social media post, you're looking at the same elements, both for you as a business and for your potential audience. You want to work on focus, depth, and value. For focus, we're talking about niche topics, so not broad spectrum information. A lot of times, if you're working, especially as a web only resource, you're going to have a much more specialized set of hobbies or values you're covering. For example, if you wanted to, say, cover current movies, but you only want to cover a certain type of current movie, you want to cover science fiction movies, or you want to cover science fiction movies, but you want to do ones from the past. So classic sci-fi movies, that would be an example of a niche subcategory. And of course, when you're writing online, it does feel a little different than when you are writing for a traditional news source like a newspaper. You're creating more of a mix of a personal and professional feel. The majority of the time, you are going to want to maintain more professional tones when you're writing. This means, of course, not using I or we or you're or that type, first or second person. You're looking at still writing in the third person for everything. It, of course, does depend on what your topic is. If it's something where it is appropriate for you to reference yourself, or say my friend so and so, or that, or have a we or you statement, it is possible to make it work. But the majority of the time, if you're unsure, it's better to err on the side of caution and use third person. have that slightly more professional tone to your writing. You want to add to the discussion that you see online. So you aren't just repeating something you saw on another website, you're actually creating more of a dialogue with your audience and with possibly other reviewers online. You want to include other outside sources you aren't seeing as much. If you have a field expert who has a slightly different opinion than another person's field expert, and both of them are valid primary sources or secondary sources, then that's a great way to add value to the online discussion without saying, I believe X or I want Y. You're actually developing something that could be turned into a dialogue, into a more valuable piece of information than copying and pasting everything someone else says. Now, again, your homework for the next 2 weeks is writing your web project. You need to find an interview related to your major. You are also going to work. So, your interview related to your major, you're looking for someone who has information about current projects in your field, anyone who might know about new developments in something. Like if you're in chemical engineering, is there something new coming out of that department? You can ask your professors if they would like to be interviewed. They do count as an interview source if they're able to give you the information you need about a topic. You can also look for people who are professionals in your field. That could be an architect, or it could be someone who works in Lafayette City government, or someone who is a local entrepreneur, or just whatever your major area is. You're looking for someone who can help you write a web article. Well, they aren't going to write it, but someone who can offer an interview with new, fresh information about a current topic in your field. And then you are writing a web article based on that and additional information. So remember, whenever you did your interview project, you looked up information about that person. In this case, you're looking up information about a topic. So look for current information at the latest. Hopefully, it's only within the past 2 years. And if not more recent, the closer it is to the present, the better. So take that information and write a web article. Use quotes and paraphrasing from your interview. If they should have at least 1 or 2 quotes available for you, and you'll put everything together for October 10th. That is not this coming Sunday, but the Sunday after. So you do have a little time, but don't wait until the last minute. You really, really need to line up interviews ahead of time. People have a tendency of booking too many things, and they get busy, or you miss them, or something happens and it falls through. So if you can, it would be even better to look for a couple of people to interview if your interview is a few days away. That way, if one falls through, you have a backup. I'm also posting your chapter 6 quiz. That is also due on the 10th. So you have until then to complete both of these assignments. If you have any questions, email me. We can meet on Zoom or meet before or after class to discuss any questions or concerns you have about the project. and I will return your interview project grades so you can see if there were any problem areas or anything you can work on. And that's about it for now. I will post a couple more videos about different key topics for chapter 6, and I will see you guys on Monday.